Welcome back to Edison TV, where today we are speaking with a world-leading brand specializing in industrial chains and engineering products used in machinery everywhere, from forklift trucks to escalators to funfair rides at theme parks. I have Renold's CEO, Robert Purcell, with me now. Hello to you, Robert. Renold's products are used across a vast range of industries, as I mentioned there, everything from construction to food and drink manufacturing to all sorts of areas of society that we use and we are familiar with. Can you talk through in further detail what your company does?
Hi, thank you very much, Louisa. Renold is a business, is about 150 years old now. Hans Renold actually invented the industrial roller chain in Manchester all that time ago, and we're still based there. 3/4 of our turnover is industrial chains, and these are really quite technical products that are used, as you've mentioned, in many industries and service applications. So some things you didn't mention: forklift trucks, I think you mentioned food and beverage, aerospace, escalators, natural resources, automation and robotics, logistics centers, every type of manufacturing, defense, all sorts of bits and pieces. We also have 1/4 of our turnover revenue, which is our TT or torque transmission division, and that's really 3 niche businesses that are into making and selling couplings, gear spindles, and gears. Before the pandemic, turnover was around 190 million in total. We operate in 20 countries, and we sell our product in about 100 countries, or a little bit over 100 countries. The size, for our size, we are well diversified geographically, and only about 7% of our revenue is in the UK. We manufacture all over the world, with our main factories in the UK, Germany, China, India, and the US. And we have smaller service centres in several other countries and a number of commercial centres as well. We have no great customer, geographic, industry or application concentration, and we sell products that go into capital goods, maintenance and capital projects.
Now, Robert, Renold recently reported 2021 results. What were the operational highlights and how have you come through the challenges of COVID?
Clearly, last year was an eventful period, I guess we describe it as, with the pandemic striking from the very beginning. However, we did take swift action and we implemented some extra cost controls. This meant that we had a very strong cash generation last year, with net debt reducing by circa 50% to 18.4 million. Due to the cost controls, even though we had a 12.7% reduction in revenues driven by the pandemic, return on sales was resilient at 6.8% compared to the prior year at 7.1%. So our adjusted operating profit was 11.2 million, down from the 2020 result of 13.4 million. Due to the actions we took, the impact on profit was far less than you would expect for the type of revenue contraction that we saw, and the significant material cost pressures and supply chain disruption there was and still is. Order intake has been improving throughout the period and into the new financial year, with a closing order book sort of circa 10% ahead, 31st of March 2020. Our adjusted EPS was 2p this period compared to 2.9p last year. However, the basic EPS from continuing operations was 1.7p, which was actually up from the prior year at 1.5, and that's due to the completion of our major restructuring work that our strategy required in the previous year. Clearly, as a very international company, we saw very different timing of events around the world and quite considerably different market conditions. For instance, even with the pandemic, our Australasian business saw sales rise 8.1%, and our new Chinese factory continued to develop, increasing its profitability considerably. Generally, the shape of the year for us was a big hit up front in sales and orders, with gradual improvement through the year, as we and indeed our customers learned how to deal with the pandemic and markets returned to more normal conditions. We're emerging from the pandemic in very good shape, with our balance sheet in a good state, as it's been for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you what is the financial position of the group, but you have pretty much summed that up there. But are things looking good then, would you say now?
Yeah, for us, a couple of things came together really. One was the pandemic, and that sort of got us to batten the hatches down in the first part of the year because nobody really knew how long things were going to go on for and what was going to happen. But at the same time, as I think I mentioned earlier, we had also just come to the end of the first phase of our strategy, where we'd done the big, costly restructuring exercises, which required a lot of cash. And therefore, you put those two things together, and actually, our cash generation was very good last year. And if there ever could be a good time for a pandemic, it came at quite a good time for us.
Yeah, that has been seen. Some people are saying that it's come at a good time for them. But what about your outlook then for the future?
We're seeing a very broad-based recovery. We saw it through the second half of last year, and that's continued into the first quarter of the current financial year. Our order books were about 10% up, as I said, at the end of the of last year, and they've built considerably since then as well. And not just because we've announced the winning of a big new £11 million Type 26 frigate order in the last few weeks. Generally, we've seen some good improvements. Our operations are working very hard to drive volumes up from last year's low levels to meet the current much higher demand. We're being hit by all the things you read about, such as labour restrictions, material availability, pricing, supply chain issues like container availability, and costs. However, at the moment, we're coping well with all these things, and our teams around the world are doing an excellent job. We put in place a very robust set of methodologies for dealing with COVID in our facilities, and these have served us well. As you know, the situation is variable and varied around the world, but we have so far coped well. Our Malaysian facility has just gone into a full lockdown for a few weeks. Our Indian facility has just come out of one. One of our great strengths is that we really have been moving towards standardizing our product range globally. We have much further to go yet, but we've made good progress. And this means that we can move some production from site to site around the world. For instance, when the US put tariffs on Chinese production, we could move production to India. When India was locked down, we could move production to China. We have an increasingly robust manufacturing footprint, which our customers, particularly OEMs, will be finding very attractive.
Yeah, you mentioned there, Robert, the frigate deal. Is there any more that you can tell us about that? I'm just diving in with that question.
It's actually the batch 2, so we're just coming to the end of batch 1. We do talk about a large military contract sometimes, which we've had for a few years. That was batch 1. This is batch 2. Batch 2 is bigger and will go on until 2030, I believe, from memory. So it's a long-term contract. These are really big couplings, are very demanding for frigates, as you can imagine, and we're very pleased to have won that business.
Yeah, definitely. That's great news, isn't it? Let's turn our attention to sustainability and emissions, which is a subject area that is becoming increasingly important for companies across the board, isn't it? How are you addressing sustainability and emissions?
Our plans going forwards are sort of manifold, including a new, more overt place for sustainability in the business. For us, ESG is a subset of our 6 pillars of sustainability, and these pillars are what you'd expect from an ESG agenda: environmental, social, both internal and external, and governance. But we have 2 additional pillars. The first of those is economic sustainability, which is about making sure that what we do is sustainable for Renold as well as the planet and society. And finally, we have customer sustainability. So whilst we are developing the sorts of programs you'd expect, which would reduce power consumption, etc., we also have this ability to help our customers to realize their sustainability goals through our products. So, for instance, they can save power, reduce their environmental footprint, as our products last longer, or indeed don't require lubrication. There are a number of things that people can use our products for, which will help them meet their goals. So we have many products which will accelerate their own programs. I suppose I would describe our enabler that allows companies to meet their ESG objectives whilst at the same time allowing them to meet their productivity and efficiency targets. They do indeed they don't have to compromise at all. They can hit both their sustainability and their ordinary operational targets both at the same time.
And what about the future then? What is the attraction of Renold for investors in the future?
Renold is coming out of the pandemic in good shape. We finished our major restructuring program and leverage is low. With the restructuring complete, the cash burn of approximately sort of £4 million a year has also finished, and going forward, we have more cash for strategic investments of various kinds, or to put towards debt reduction and the obvious benefits that may bring. We're a real world business that has no particular geographic, market sector, industry, application or customer concentration in its business, and therefore we're really quite robust. We're a very strong name in our markets, and we've been revitalizing our products and operations so we can deliver more to what our customers want. Our products are relatively low cost but critical to our customers' performance, therefore we can bring disproportionate advantage to them. We sell a premium differentiated product that gives customers performance benefits. We've done much of the heavy lifting in previous years, and the pandemic has shown how well this has worked, and now we are well placed to grow and develop organically and through acquisition. As a business, we're at an interesting and exciting stage as we take this 150-year-old company into much greater success.
And we wish you lots of luck with that success in the future. Robert Purcell from Renold, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Louisa.